So I'm not exactly sure where to begin, but I guess it all started in around, well, it's hard to say when it started, but around 2012, I started getting some strange ear infections. I was on vacation with my family in Mexico, my two sons and my wife, and I had a terrible ear infection that flared up just before we left, and then had gotten better, and then while we were there, it got really terrible again, and we were down in Oaxaca, Mexico, and my ear had a terrible time because this ear infection. Anyway, I went to follow up on that and antibiotics, etc. A few years later, I think it must have been around 2014, I was at a meeting with my boss up in Seattle area, and my eardrum burst, and I could completely burst. I could no longer hear. So more infections, more problems, and eventually I was diagnosed after seeing many specialists with something called cholesteatoma, which is a keratin buildup inside your ear. I may or may not have had that, but was something built up inside my ear. After the first surgery that they recommended in 2014, I kept feeling like there was something left in there, almost like I thought they had left surgical packing in there, and I was not feeling great at all, and my doctor wasn't being very responsive. So I went to a guy who is the head of the otolaryngology department at UCSF. He performed a second surgery, which was meant to, because the bones in my middle ear had all disintegrated, they had to put in a metal torp to replace my bones so I could still hear. So that was the second half of the surgery. He did that, and he said there was an unusual amount of scar tissue in my ear, but other than that, he found there were no signs of unusual infection, although some high yeast stuff, but not that out of the world. And I had insisted on an infectious disease doctor being involved because it seemed like there was something of an infection. At any rate, this is a long story, so bear with me. I still had problems after his surgery, and again, it felt like stuff was left in my ear. I had gone for a second opinion before the very first surgery, and that doctor had told me, it's not totally apparent that you have cholesteatoma. To me, you might want to hold off. But my wife and I had decided that, I needed to be productive at work, and I got the first surgery anyway, which in retrospect was a mistake. So I had gone back to this doctor I had consulted with, an ENT, and he said that he would like his mentor from Stanford to see me. So I went to Stanford, and he's the head of otolaryngology at Stanford at the time, Dr. Jackler. He said, yeah, sure, and it looks like you have a reoccurrence of this cholesteatoma, which never happens, so, but I think we can give you a more drastic surgery that actually opens up the entire cavity in there, so you'll for the rest of your life need to have your ear cleaned out every 6 months, but this won't recur ever again. And I'm like, okay, this guy's the man. So I had that surgery, and sure enough, I got worse after the surgery. It seemed to be spreading from my left sinus into my left sinus, down my neck, whatever it was. So after many follow-ups, I saw they looked at my throat, they looked at my sinuses, I had started having GI issues, so they looked there. I went to the Mayo Clinic and was worked up for just about everything. One thing that did come up when I saw one of the alternative doctors. There's a whole litany of doctors I saw that I'm not going to go into, but did notice that my T cells were really low. It looked like an AIDS patient or a leukemia patient, so I ended up having AIDS tests, and I had several because several doctors found that when they retest my reran that panel to check that. No one had any explanation, or does any to this day. So in the meantime, I found an infectious disease doctor who was willing to look at exploring what was wrong, and she believed that I had an infectious disease, and has been a fantastic doctor, although hasn't really cured me. She's tried a lot of things. Excuse me. She eventually I was treated for Lyme disease by her, and it seemed like those treatments simply made me worse. Maybe I just am not tough enough to make it through the difficult initial part of the treatments. But the more I was put on various antibiotics, the more it seems to just spread my problem. So it started spreading, felt like through my shoulders, back, arms, to my extremities. My veins started to have bulging veins, real sensitive skin where I would get sort of allergic reactions. And then I started having environmental sensitivities, which I had never had anything like that, but started with an employee of mine wearing a certain deodorant or cologne or something. I would get violent, like just seriously sick every time I was around the guy, and I felt terrible because he was kind of like my best employee, and he loved mentoring from me, and I had to tell him, hey, I can't be around you if you're wearing whatever you're wearing. It's making me really sick. And it was just, since then I've had to say that to a lot of people, and it's very difficult and uncomfortable. So now we're getting to the part close to where I discovered that I have Morgellons disease. I had been seeing the ENT on a regular basis, not the one from Stanford, but the one who had referred me. He had to clean out my ears all the time, and I had no energy, I was sick, and that was causing a lot of emotional issues like depression and anxiety. There'd be times I just couldn't get out of bed. Exhaustion started to take over as this stuff seemed to spread. And he said, there was a doctor, a Stanford-educated doctor, that he wanted me to see that was a good doctor. I started to see that doctor, run a bunch of tests and stuff, and at the same time, I don't remember the exact sequence, but I had like this strange mucus strings that were like stringy, really stretchy mucus. They almost looked like worm shaped, but they're not worms. But a lot of people who have Morgellons believe they are worms, because a lot of people have a similar thing come out of their sinus. I sent it to I thought it looked like worms, so I sent it to a place that did analysis of that stuff, and they said, no, this is some kind of mucus stuff, so not worms. Anyway, at one point I put it under my son's toy microscope, and it was filled with these red, blue, and black fibers. I was like, what is that? So I started searching for like fibers, mucus, illness, and I found a reference to Morgellons disease. And then I did more research, and I found that there was a doctor in San Francisco, Dr. Stricker, who treated and diagnosed Morgellons disease. And so I had started seeing another doctor that I had been referred to by my ENT, and he was a real smart guy and was trying to help me. I went to, at any rate, and he wanted me to see a therapist because I had so much stuff. There were a lot of people dying in my life, and I was having a hard time working. As a matter of fact, I had taken off some time from work and then gone back. After my 2016 surgery, which was the last one, I took a long time off work. And then I went back to work for a short period of time. I ended up going back to work in 2018. This is probably a rambling story, but I'm trying to just get it out there. I mean, you might not want to watch this whole thing, but at any rate, Dr. Stricker, I made an appointment to go see Dr. Stricker. I was seeing the other doctor, Dr. A, and he had asked me to see this therapist. I went to see Dr. Stricker. Actually, I went to see his nurse practitioner, through Melissa Fessler. She's well known in the Morgellons research and clinical community, just as Dr. Stricker is. And it took her about 2 minutes with a magnifier to say, yes, you have Morgellons disease, and therefore you also have Lyme disease, because that's Dr. Stricker, and her belief is that Morgellons is a symptom of, or is correlated strongly to Lyme disease. So I went back to Dr. A, and I told him, hey, this doctor says that I have Lyme disease and Morgellons, and he flew off the handle. He went nuts, Dr. A. He said, this guy is phony, these guys they're shysters, yeah, and I had been seeing the therapist, who I told the therapist about it, and the therapist was like, you're not crazy, you're a sane person, you have something really wrong with you. And so this therapist actually worked in the Dr. A's practice, and Dr. A called me up right after that and said, your therapist is no longer going to be able to see you. He's got family issues and is stepping away from the practice. Come to find out later that he was kind of fired, or I don't know exactly what happened, but I get a sense that it's something to do with him not agreeing that I had a psychological illness. I'd never heard of Morgellons before I found fibers in my mucus, and this other doctor diagnosed me. I didn't. It wasn't like I read about Morgellons and then thought, oh, I've got that. I had something, and then I went and found out about Morgellons. This is a really long story, so I may break it up a little bit, but suffice it to say, once I found out I had Morgellons, I tried to treat it. I had, before I knew what it was actually, I started making real progress getting better on one particular antibiotic. For 36 days I took it, and this stuff was dying and sort of crumbling and in my sinus, and I could feel it in my gut and in my foot, and I was really on that road to getting better. However, on the 37th day, it just started, something happened. Like, it gained resistance. It started oozing some kind of nasty liquid that tastes like Listerine and made me really sick the more I took the medicine. So very strange. There's lots of things I could talk about in terms of my symptoms and so forth, but at any rate, I started pursuing more antibiotic treatment and other things that are prescribed by Melissa Fessler through Dr. Stricker's office, and I was not getting better. It was very difficult. The treatment was difficult. I ended up leaving work again and going on disability, and Melissa Fessler had noted in one of my charts that I had Morgellons disease. This was reported to my insurance company, and my disability was cut off. So that's a real problem if a doctor can say you have a certain illness, and that would suddenly, in your insurance company's mind, disqualify you from receiving your benefits as a sick person. So very disturbing and real difficult. I was already having enough anxiety and stress and depression from being so ill and not working, that now I had no money, and I had a family to support, a mortgage to pay, and my wife has been a stay-at-home mom since our children were born. Anyways, a terrible experience. I ended up going to court and settling with them. I had to settle. I couldn't, because I had no choice. I just needed the money, so I couldn't see it through, but my lawyer said I probably would have won. So don't just take your insurance company's word for it. Follow through with legal action if you need to. Anyways, over time I got to learn more about the Morgellons and the Morgellons community and get to know other people online. And there are lots of people that have lots of theories about what it is and how you get it and how you cure it even. And believe me, I've tried them all and I've listened to all the theories, and the conclusion is no one really knows. My conclusion is no one really knows at this point. So I don't really want to talk about that. What I do want to talk about is what happens to you as a person when you get it, because it's debilitating. It affects every relationship that you have. It affects your economic situation, your emotional situation, your family relationships, your friends, and if you don't know what's going on, even if you do, it's quite devastating. Over time, I've really seen this a lot in people who were not in as stable a situation as me. I mean, I work for a large company, I have a good career, and I've been able to sort of get through, although there's a lot of things I still want to talk about in that area. Well, I've seen people that I've gotten to know online who have taken their own lives, who have ended up on the street, who've ended up living in cars, whose family abandons them, who have no access to proper care and either mental health care or other medical care, and it's devastating. Just the amount of pain that this causes, and it's not just the disease. It's the fact that this disease is not recognized that makes it even worse. The symptoms are horrific. Having Morgellons is a horrific experience. Not knowing what you have is even more horrific, and having no one be able to help you and everyone pretty much abandoned is, I can see why people give up. So I created this site so that I could tell my story and give people an opportunity to tell their story, because we're all human beings. We're not necessarily crazy people, although many people are driven to the brink of madness. And I think it's time that we normalized our experience and shared with others what we've gone through. So this is a really long introduction video, and I don't know if anyone's made it through this whole thing, but I intend to post a video in answer to each of the 5 questions that I posted on this page, and encourage others to as well. Either post a video or just in text, and respond as you feel comfortable. I really don't want people to talk about how they got cured or treated themselves medically, or what Morgellons is, because there's a lot of places where people talk about all that stuff, and I would say that that there's no final truth on that that we can all refer to. So this is more a place for people to talk about their experience, and if you read the questions below, feel free to post your own answers. I'll start to post mine. I've got a few friends that other people that I've been talking to that are taking action about their situation with Morgellons in terms of raising awareness. I wanted to be part of that, and they've really been encouraging. So for what it's worth, this is my first video, and I probably should have turned my camera the other way. All right.